All right, welcome aboard, everybody. A little college football talk as we go inside enemy territory today. And, ooh, it's a very special opponent. And, boy, Green all geared up for the opponent. Hey, wait a minute. I thought you were a Syracuse fan, and you're wearing the wrong gear. What the heck is going on here? My Lord. It is Notre Dame, and it'll be at Notre Dame. Always fun to go out there. Today's broadcast brought to you by our friends at Play It Again Sports down on Erie Boulevard in DeWitt. Go see our friends at Play It Again today or turn in some of your gear, get some cash. Always nice to do that as well. All right, we've got a special guest to talk all about all things Notre Dame. He's covered college football, including Notre Dame, for years. Let's talk with the one, the only, Ryan Roberts, who joins us today. What's up, Ryan? How are you?
Doing well, fellas. I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Good to be with you. I see you got your little call there, at Rise and Draft. Tell people about at Rise and Draft.
Yeah, it's a Twitter handle. So if anybody is wanting to learn more about Notre Dame football outside of this interview, all the content I post is going to be there. I also have a Notre Dame YouTube channel through A to Z Sports as well. So if you want to learn, even I don't know exactly what the pulse is on excitement for Syracuse fans going into the game, but if you do want to learn about Notre Dame football, NFL draft, college football, you follow everything at Rise and Draft, or A to Z Sports is the publication I work for.
And I know that Lurch said this right off the top that geez, we're supposed to be the Syracuse guys, and I'm here in full Notre Dame thing. But it's important, Lurch, when you welcome someone into your den, that you make them more comfortable. And I have with the Irish, baby. So this is great. And just to tell people, my dad raised me a Notre Dame fan since I was a yee lad. And then as we worked along our way, we moved here to the New York area in 2008, and me and my dad got season tickets for Syracuse football. So we're a transplant, but anytime Syracuse and Notre Dame played, I've consistently donned the Notre Dame gear. So at least I've been consistent.
Let me ask you this question then, Boy Green. Okay. So if this game were at the JMA Wireless Dome, and your dad wasn't with you, and you were attending the game with just other people here in Central New York, would you be wearing that nonsense or not? Yes or no?
It's funny that you asked that because I'm curious, has that actually happened? But every Syracuse Notre Dame game has been at Yankee Stadium, at MetLife Stadium, at or South Bend, obviously. So every time they've played, I know, although I was with my family, there was one where it was in the JMA Wireless Dome. Me and my dad had end zone seats, and we were donning Notre Dame gear. So I imagine I'd be wearing the Irish.
I was actually at that game, Paul. That was a Drew Pine football game, quarterback for Notre Dame. I went up to the dome. I'm still going to call it the Carrier Dome because it's my first time ever there, so I refuse to call it the Wireless Dome. I refuse. But yeah, I was there. I was in MetLife for them versus Notre Dame Syracuse. I think it was like 2018, 2019, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yes,
so So I've been at a couple of Syracuse Notre Dame games, and it was very different vibes. I mean, the first one with Dino Babers, Syracuse scored a ton of points in Notre Dame. Notre Dame did not have a good defense that year. I think it was probably 2016 is actually now what I'm thinking about. But then when they went to the Courier Dome, Notre Dame just duoed them to death and just ran the football up and down their throat in that game. So a couple different experiences. I'm interested to see what this one looks like in South Bend this weekend.
Well, technically, Ryan, it would have been the Carrier Dome back then. So you are not speaking any blasphemy whatsoever. You were just speaking the name of the arena when you were in it, which is perfectly normal. What's not perfectly normal, it seems, at Notre Dame over the last couple of decades is stability at the head coach. But apparently it is now. Marcus Freeman has really settled in as the Notre Dame coach. And we went through a lot of years of a lot of Notre Dame coaching chatter and some pretty good hires along the way. It seems like things have settled down a little bit. Talk to me about what he's like as a coach and why are things quiet, dare I say, on the Western Front when it comes to the Notre Dame coaching situation?
I mean, they weren't too quiet early on in his career because obviously he had a couple troubling losses his first couple seasons and obviously lost to Northern Illinois last year. But, that first year, he was 0-3 to start his tenure at Notre Dame. People forget that because he coached the Oklahoma State Bowl game during the 2021 season, and then he transitioned to Ohio State, and then he lost at Marshall at home. I was actually at that Marshall game, unfortunately, in South Bend. So his tenure got off to a little bit of a rough start, but I think people need to give some credence to the fact that he had never been a head coach anywhere before. He was a young, up-and-coming defensive coordinator, and once Brian Kelly decided to go down to the Bayou, they had to make a decision, and the players all just gravitated towards him, and they had so much backing for Coach Freeman being able to have that ascension to head coach. And after those early struggles, we saw less of Notre Dame beating themselves against opponents that they should just outright destroy, and we've seen less of that. But then the most important part, comparative to the previous tenure under Brian Kelly, is Kelly was complete opposite. Brian Kelly would beat everybody he was supposed to for the most part, but he would never win the big games. Never. And Coach Freeman last season in a 3-game playoff stretch to get to the national championship won more top 10 games than as many top 10 games as Brian Kelly had ever won in his entire Notre Dame tenure, right? In 12 years. So that has caused him to become very beloved, obviously, because we're starting to see he's an easy sell as a person, man. Like, he really is. He is a young guy, has a great energetic personality. He's a great recruiter. He's well respected in the community and by his players and by his coaches. Everything is great from a personal perspective. But now the fact that he is now turning that corner and sits with like a 40-12 overall record, whatever it is right now, people are obviously on the Marcus Freeman bandwagon. And now Notre Dame fans, the next ascension is you have to get used to every offseason now. Marcus Freeman's name is going to be involved with every head coaching opening on the college and NFL level. Like, it's going to happen every year now, and it's because he's such an attractive young coach.
Well, I would think that Notre Dame is the pinnacle. Why the heck is he going to go anywhere else? Go ahead, BG.
Well, that's
the point, though. That's the point. I mean, I was going to say, Paul, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that's a great point. Is that like when his name got brought up with Florida, LSU, obviously me coaching Notre Dame. I'm coaching. I don't coach at Notre Dame. Me covering Notre Dame, I had to do some back channeling and just try to figure out like if there's any fire to this smoke and all that type of stuff. And I think that there's a very small list of jobs that would ever be purely attractive to Marcus Freeman. And one is probably Ohio State because for obvious reasons he played there and that's a program that's very close to his heart. And then an NFL gig potentially down the road could be a spot. But LSU, Florida, some of those jobs, I think that Marcus Freeman considers Notre Dame a better job than those jobs right now.
Yeah. I
that's where I wanted to go, actually, because Freeman was heavily linked to the Chicago Bears opening. Obviously, they go Ben Johnson, so that doesn't happen. I've already heard it in whispers for the Giants job as a possibility, among others, but who knows if any of that is legitimate or real or not. How big of a fear is that for Notre Dame fans that, to your point, they sort of have to get used to the chatter that happens? It's one of two directions. They're terrible and they're fired, or they have success and everyone dreams of stealing them away from you. So I guess it's sort of part of the ethos here. But from an NFL standpoint, it sounds like if that started last offseason, and I'm already hearing it now in the middle of the season, it sounds like it's only going to get heavier the further, we sort of progress along here.
Well, unfortunately, I think Notre Dame fans need to convince themselves that it's a compliment because it is, right? Like the fact that people want your head coach is a compliment to what he's building, obviously, right? And the ability he has to not only build a program, but to also, again, kind of get a lot of energy around a fan base and excitement for what he's moving into the future. So all those things are a compliment. But I mean, Paul, it's going to be uncomfortable for Notre Dame fans every offseason. It's going to be. And I understand it, right? Like, again, when the LSU chatter started, and LSU was very interested in Marcus Freeman, and that died quickly because Marcus Freeman, I don't think, is overly interested in LSU. Like, that's just never been a thing. He's turned down the job literally twice, not the head coaching position, but to coach at LSU twice. So LSU was never a thought of a point of contention for me from a Notre Dame fan perspective. Florida, not really either, because Florida's a little different because it's a little bit more of an unknown commodity to Coach Freeman, but I was never worried about that at all either. Really, again, Ohio State and the NFL are interesting. But here's the thing about the NFL stuff. I do think that there's a possibility that we could see Marcus Freeman in the NFL at some point in his career because he's a very goal-oriented person, and I think he's going to continue to push himself to be the best version of himself and see where this thing can take him. But I do also think that he's comfortable at Notre Dame, so I don't think he's going to jump at just any NFL job that's out there. But I do think that when you have a guy that's only 39 years old and he's continuing to reach that pinnacle of the coaching profession on his level, you have to be worried about that type of job that is very attractive. So I don't know if the Giants are an attractive spot. I honestly don't know. I haven't talked to anybody around Coach Freeman to know if there's any true interest there. I'm not surprised that they like him. But when you're a position open now that just got rid of a head coach, but a GM is also kind of on the chopping block, like that does make things a little bit murkier as far as like me wanting to jump on with Joe Shane right now, right? So I don't know if that's a good spot for him overall, but Notre Dame fans just have to be used to being uncomfortable because you want him in South Bend as long as possible, and as long as he is doing great things in South Bend, he's going to be attractive to some programs and some NFL organizations.
Ryan Roberts, our Notre Dame insider, inside enemy territory with us as we talk Syracuse, Notre Dame this weekend. Before we get into the Notre Dame players, let's talk about a former Notre Dame player. You know, it would have been a lot more interesting had we approached this game with Steve Angeli, the former Notre Dame quarterback, quarterbacking for Syracuse. We didn't get a chance. We're not going to get a chance this season, at least, to see that. But tell us what you knew about Angeli out there in Notre Dame, and why did he jump ship and end up landing at Syracuse?
Yeah, I mean, he had an opportunity to win the job this offseason, entering after obviously Riley Leonard goes off to the NFL. It was a Steve Angeli versus CJ Carr versus Kenny Minchie battle. Obviously, he's the elder statesman of the group. He's the oldest of those three, which I thought gave him an opportunity early on in the battle because he has the most experience compared to the other two. He was at least at first the most consistent of the three as well. So like that did give him, I don't know if I want to call it an edge, but it gave him a chance in the beginning. But unfortunately for him, going from the spring, just kind of when you left spring, you knew that it was going to be one of the two young guys. And Marcus Freeman and the Notre Dame staff, to my understanding, had a very deep conversation with Steve and told him exactly where things were, which is why he ended up transferring at the end of spring and wanted to find a different opportunity that was out there. So he got a chance. Notre Dame ultimately just was comfortable with the younger talents, and obviously CJ Carr has done a really good job for Notre Dame so far, so you understand why they wanted to go with the younger talent. But it was not an easy decision, man. I could say this, just full transparency. There was a lot of people, both in the Notre Dame like not fandom is I guess the right word, but I'm mostly going from the Notre Dame players perspective and the people that back Notre Dame behind the scenes, that they love Steve Angeli. I mean, the people loved him and they were willing to fight for him. And if Steve Angeli was the starting quarterback at Notre Dame, the team would have played very hard for Steve. So Steve was very well liked, was always that guy that kind of sacrificed his own personal gains for the team and had done the backup quarterback job for him for the last couple years for Notre Dame going into the year. But overall, I think everyone was just really happy for him. He got his Notre Dame degree. He got a chance to go and start at Syracuse. And he was having a really good season until, obviously, he got injured with the Achilles against Clemson, which fortunately, it was my first time in Death Valley, so it was a really fun game time experience. But unfortunately, I got to see Steve Angeli get injured in person, which really sucked just from like the Notre Dame fandom perspective. But I hope that he gets back healthy because he was playing really good football for Syracuse before he got hurt. He was a big reason that they were winning that Clemson game when he got hurt.
Yeah, we all wonder what the record would be if Angeli was still at quarterback for Syracuse this season. I just had another thought in my head and it went right out of there. Gosh, go ahead, boy.
Okay, I could jump in while you're pondering it here. Ryan, were you at all surprised by the way that Steve Angeli performed at Syracuse? It sounds like with everything that sort of you were hearing, you're not, but I don't want to assume. Like, were you surprised? Because for how it was reported from a Syracuse side, I'll tell you this, right? They get Ricky Collins from LSU. He's the man. When Steve Angeli comes in, the reporting from Syracuse side is, yeah, he's in the quarterback room, but hey, this is Ricky Collins' job. And there is a clear shift that occurs somewhere from that initial reporting to Steve Angeli is the quarterback. So obviously something dramatically changed here. So I'm just sort of curious from that Notre Dame perspective on the play he did have before he got hurt.
I'm not surprised at all that Steve was playing well because Steve, every time he got an opportunity at Notre Dame, he played well. I mean, I think he had like 10 touchdowns to 1 interception in like his brief opportunities at Notre Dame with like 70 something attempts, right? So like he was very productive in the opportunities he had at Notre Dame. He was just obviously never the guy outside of one start in the bowl game against Oregon State a couple years ago. So he didn't have a lot of opportunities, but he did the most of it. And I think that the conversation point that came down to the battle, to add a little bit more context, is it was the battle of consistency and dependability versus what Notre Dame deems as more upside with CJ Carr and even with Kenny Minchie. Like those guys are looked at as a little bit more physically gifted than what Steve is, but Steve's not a bad talent by any stretch. I mean, he's 6'2", he's 210, 215 pounds. He throws a good ball. He's a solid enough of an athlete to be able to maneuver in the pocket and outside at times. So like, he's not a bad talent by any stretch. Notre Dame just thought that one of the two younger quarterbacks was just a little bit more athletic and a little bit more overly talented and maybe dynamic than what Steve is. But I'm not surprised at all that he was successful because he does the little things well. Like he gets the ball out of his hands for the most part. He maneuvers the pocket well. He's accurate. He might not be the most physically impressive quarterback of all time, but the floor he brings to the table is really good. And I think that's a stabling floor that unfortunately Syracuse is missing right now because they just don't do a lot of the easy things well right now.
Yeah. What I was going to say, it came back to me is, Syracuse the last two seasons and this is about as un-Syracuse-like as it gets. Their head coach has gone out and gotten the former Ohio State starting quarterback and then a very viable quarterback, as you mentioned, from the great University of Notre Dame. These are not the waters that Syracuse typically swims in, Ryan, and yet Fran Brown has done it. So let me ask you a Fran Brown question here. What from afar have you heard? Have you seen? Do you believe that Fran Brown is as a head coach here at the college level?
Well, we knew when he was hired with his experience, obviously most recently in the SEC, that he was a dynamic recruiter. Like everybody knew that, and it was important for Syracuse, especially because he has Northeast ties to recruiting as well. So like keeping some of the top talent at home, but then also making it a viable option to your point of getting some talents from. I mean, you even go down to like Jonte Cook, who has had a little bit of a troubling, first couple years in college football, but like he was a former like top 50 overall player, right? So like you're getting some talent to come out to Syracuse with New York, which is not an easy task by any point, right? Like you have to be a really good recruiter to get talent to come here ultimately, right? So I think that the recruiting upside was always there potentially. He obviously had a really good first season for Syracuse, and things have kind of come downhill a little bit this year with a lot of the injuries that they're dealing with. But I think that Fran Brown is a really good young coach, but he's a dynamic recruiter that as long as I think he's going to be at Syracuse, he's going to attract some good talent to come up there.
All right, we're talking Notre Dame football. We are inside enemy territory, the Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button, be part of our growing community. Today's broadcast is brought to you by our friends at Play It Again Sports. Let's just take 30 seconds to learn a little bit more about our friends from Play It Again.
When you don't want to pay full price for sporting goods, and who does, then there's only one place to go in Syracuse. Play It Again Sports. With both new and gently used gear, Play It Again has prices way less than regular retail stores. Another unique aspect of this awesome sporting goods store is that they will give you money for that quality sports gear collecting dust in your basement, attic, or garage. No appointment necessary, just bring it into the store. Play It Again Sports in the DeWitt Town Center on Erie Boulevard right next to Crunch Fitness. Don't spend more, play it again. PlayItAgainSportsSyracuse.com.
All right, we are back inside enemy territory talking Syracuse Notre Dame coming up this weekend. Notre Dame on an 8-game winning streak after losing their first 2 games of the season. Let me start there. So Syracuse Notre Dame got off to a very rocky start. What happened in those first 2 games? They're both against ranked opponents, but nonetheless, 0-2, not a great place to be. But they have rolled since then, and not only have they won 8 in a row, they've been winning some of those games convincing. Let's talk about it, Ryan.
Yeah, Miami was an interesting one to start the year. Obviously, you go down to Hard Rock Stadium, which, it could be a tough environment, especially first game of the year. There was a lot of expectations for Miami, and Miami's ranked inside the top 15, so obviously they've been a good team. But I really think that was more of a circumstance of you had a first-time starting quarterback, his first career starts, and Miami was very unknown, like nobody knew exactly what to expect for Carson Beck, for instance, right, a quarterback. You didn't know anything you knew about Malachi Toney as a recruit, but like you didn't know exactly what Malachi Toney was going to bring to the table. Ruben Bain was back healthy finally after being banged up the season prior. So it was a little bit of a guessing game as far as just what exactly Miami was going to be this year. And they took Notre Dame, I think, by surprise and kind of shocked them early in that first half. They came back and tied it in that football game, but ultimately they won that one. The Texas A&M game was a very frustrating one in South Bend because Notre Dame was leading for the majority of that football game, but unfortunately, the Notre Dame secondary and the Notre Dame defense the first 3 games of the season, we saw a transition period under defensive coordinator Chris Ash that just it was troubling, man. I mean, like there were people calling for his head after the first 3 games. Now, luckily, the last 7 they're only averaging to let up a little over 10 points a game, so the defense has turned it around big time. But I really think that it was first time starting quarterback the first couple games. And then you had a first-time defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. So the transition period, I think, was a little bit tough for Notre Dame. They ended up losing to 2 top 15 teams, though, by 4 total points. And we don't take take comfort in losses, especially when you're a program like Notre Dame. But I think when you kind of just look at some of the context, I do think that Notre Dame has obviously improved a ton since that first couple games of the year.
Again, we're speaking with our main squeeze, Ryan Roberts, baby. It's great to reconnect in this MC Show digital world. We've done a lot of stuff together over the years, which is a lot of fun. Make sure you guys like the video and hit subscribe. Ryan, I love Notre Dame. Sorry, Syracuse fans. I love Notre Dame. I love Notre Dame's history. And, man, I love when I'm able to talk about a current player and then compare it to history. And Notre Dame has had some amazing running backs in their history, whether it's Jerome Bettis, one of my dad's favorite guys is Julius Jones, who we've had, and Alan Pickett. I mean, we could go down the full list. Jeremiyah Love, man, is an absolute freak. And he is going to be one of the top picks, I imagine, in the 2026 NFL draft. Again, every time you talk about Notre Dame, we're not talking about your uncle's random RIT Technical Institute. Notre Dame has had a lot of talent. But so I asked the impossible question. How does Jeremiyah Love and everything he's brought to the table compare to some of the greats we've seen at Notre Dame, which, again, has been a great pleasure to have that first world problem. But how does he compare against some of the greatest running backs we've seen in Irish history?
He's the best running back that I've ever seen in a Notre Dame uniform personally. I mean, I've seen highlights of Jerome Bettis, but I was born in 91, so I didn't really see Jerome Bettis, obviously. I didn't see Ricky Waters in a uniform. Right. Funny enough, the Notre Dame's all-time leading rusher is Autry Denson, who's not going to be on anybody's top 5 as far as the best running back in Notre Dame history, most productive, but he also played 4 seasons as the starting tailback, which is why it's a little bit of a longevity award potentially. But I've never seen anything like Jeremiyah Love is 214 pounds, looks the part of an NFL running back. He's physical. He blocks his butt off. He can catch the football. But this is an athlete that when he was coming out of Christian Brothers in St. Louis, Missouri, he was just a casual track and field athlete, right? He did it to stay in shape, and he ran a 10-500 meter just staying in shape, right? This is an athlete that we just don't see very often. In my lifetime of players that I have seen in depth and guys that I can remember vividly, this is the most dynamic football player I've ever seen. And obviously, Will Fuller was incredibly dynamic as a deep threat wide receiver. We've had some really good running backs, to your point, Paul, even in the recent years. Audric Estime was a really good running back. Kyron Williams was a really good running back. But nobody holds a candle to what Jeremiyah Love is right now, because this is one of the best athletes that we have ever seen in the blue and gold, and especially in recent memory, without question.
Well, you talked a little bit earlier about CJ Carr. He won the job. What's he like? What is Syracuse facing in CJ Carr? What kind of weapons does he bring to the table?
Yeah, I mean, he's very different from what Notre Dame had a season ago, and it's been a little bit of a transitional period for Notre Dame in some aspects, like the short yardage goal line offense has not been great this year because they don't have the running ability of Riley Leonard, which kind of makes things a little bit chaotic down near the goal line. So he have a more traditional pocket passer, but Notre Dame has also not had a passer as consistent and talented as this in several years as well. I mean, at least since DeShone Kizer, people would argue since Jimmy Clausen, some other people would argue since Brady Quinn. Some people are that high on him as a passer. He's very confident. He's got a little bit of arm arrogance as well. There's no throw that CJ Carr doesn't think that he can make on a football field, which has its pluses at times. It has its minuses for sure, without question. But CJ is a very talented passer, and as he continues to get more and more starting experience, we're now seeing him get a lot more ability to change protections at the line of scrimmage, audible at the line of scrimmage. He has complete control of this offense at this point, and he's steadily improving each and every game. He had a 2-interception game this past week, which is a little bit troubling for him. But overall, and I think that pick game is a little bit of the anomaly. He's taking care of the football for the most part, and he's been really dynamic, the ability to create explosive plays in the passing game, and that's been a spot that Notre Dame has struggled with before Carr took over this year.
Now, I imagine Notre Dame isn't, Syracuse fans are going to be whispering, trap game. Maybe they'll overlook us. But Notre Dame on the schedule, they need to kill, relatively speaking, Syracuse and Stanford to secure their placement and everything with the college football playoff. So I imagine there's none of that sleeping action happening from the Irish.
So when I hear trap game, it's you're looking forward to the next big obstacle, right? And you overlook an opponent. If Notre Dame doesn't beat Syracuse, there is no next big opponent, right? They need to win this football game to make the college football playoffs. You have to win your last 2 games. 9-3 Notre Dame is not getting into the college football playoffs. 10-2 Notre Dame is getting into the college football playoffs. So I don't think a trap game exists anymore, right? You can say, oh, we're looking forward to the playoffs, but again, if you lose this weekend and you do the undeniable and the absolutely horrible and lose a football game that you should absolutely lose, especially in your home stadium on senior day, then it's over, right? The ride is over. You're going to play in the Pop-Tart Bowl or some other weird bowl that no one actually cares about, especially in this day and age. When I was young, I used to love bowl season, man. I was I would watch every single bowl throughout the holiday season, and I would watch it with vigor and excitement. No one cares about those games other than the college football playoff anymore, unfortunately. So there's no more trap games for Notre Dame. They know they need to win. If they lose this football game, then their season is over, essentially, even though they have a couple games left.
Well, the salivation meter has just gone up for the Notre Dame defense. We just heard today that Joe Filardi, the freshman, will be back at quarterback. He did get one start as Syracuse Orange a couple of games ago, and it did not go so well, despite some rather rave reviews from his coaching staff about that he could throw every pass, but it didn't really wasn't throwing too many passes in that game, at least to the right team. So give me your thoughts about how this Notre Dame defense might feast, and tell us a little bit about the Notre Dame defense and what it is that Filardi has to fear here.
Well, unfortunately for Filardi, I watched the entirety of that UNC game that he started with. And it was not the most pretty game of all time. And I felt bad for the kid, like it's first action. I'm sure he was super excited, a little bit amped up, but ultimately the game was just too fast for him, and he wasn't ready, right? And unfortunately, you're going against a Notre Dame defense, and Jim, like when Paul asked me earlier. This is a defense that struggled the first 3 games of the year. I mean, they were letting up almost 33 points a game through the first 3. Since then, in the last 7 games, they're averaging to let up like 10.1 points per game. So they've been very good defensively. They just faced off against Pitt, let up 15 points, including which was a last-second touchdown in that victory against a team that was averaging over 300 yards passing per game in the previous 5 games going into that game. And they held them to like 3.8 yards per pass attempt in that football game, and it was an ugly, ugly football game for Pitt. So I don't think that you should feel very optimistic about Jonte Cook and those guys, Gill making a bunch of plays in this football game, because the Notre Dame secondary had a tough time adjusting to Chris Ash's defense early in the year, but they have become a much more aggressive team. And when Leonard Moore, Christian Gray, and the secondary are able to get their hands on you at the line of scrimmage, that allows the safeties, Don Schuler, Tay Johnson, and those cats to be able to create some big plays and create some turnovers. Notre Dame's secondary leads all of college football in forced turnovers this season, and I imagine that they will have their eyes on trying to force a couple against Syracuse.
I fear, Ryan, if you're right, that the moat was too big for one Filardi at home on Halloween against North Carolina sub-500 team. That, well,
Bill Belichick on the other sideline. I mean,
of course, obviously. But in South Bend, against this Notre Dame team with this talent, and he being, with all due respect, a lacrosse recruit that's taking some cross-pollination major in football. I have some concerns about what this moment could be for the young man. Yeah.
It's very fair. I mean, we got a couple of lacrosse guys, though. Notre Dame's top receiver, Jordan Faison, is a lacrosse player for Notre Dame as well. So a couple of lacrosse kids that are going to be playing a lot of football here on Saturday, apparently, at 3:30 Eastern time.
I would tell you, we wouldn't mind taking on Notre Dame in lacrosse, but they've actually been pretty good in lacrosse. I don't know if I like that matchup any better than I like the football matchup this year. It's Notre Dame's put quite a squad together.
Yeah, no, they were good last year, but then they won the 2 previous lacrosse national championships before that. So, yeah, they have a very good lacrosse team, and they have 2 lacrosse players, 3 if you count Tyler Buckner, 3 players that are on the lacrosse team on the football team, which is pretty interesting. It's definitely different than it has been in the past. But, like, to your question, Paul, if Syracuse is going to have a shot in this football game to keep it close and have a puncher's chance in the end, they have to make this game dirty. Like, you got to make this a physical game where Yasim Willis, who I'm very familiar with because I'm a Jersey guy and he's from New Jersey, like, you need to get that run game going and hope that the quarterback position can just make a couple plays here and there. Like, if you're depending on the freshman lacrosse player to come into Notre Dame Stadium and to have this big game, it's probably not going to be overly successful. You need to try to make this a little bit of a dogfight and a little bit of an ugly game where you win the turnover margin. Like, that's really honestly going to be Syracuse's best option.
Ryan, are you a betting man at all?
I dabble occasionally. Yeah, I dabble. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, the spread is out on the Syracuse Notre Dame game, and Syracuse is currently, let me get the current weather. They're a 35.5-point underdog at South Bend.
I think
it
started for
entertainment purposes only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where would I pick? If I was actually giving you real advice here, I would say don't touch that line one way or the other. Like, that is a ridiculous spread. Like, we don't play that game, man. Like, that is way too many points to have a real betting opportunity there. I will say here, and I don't have the over-under in front of me because that line's actually moved a little bit. I think it opened at like 34 and a half, so it's gotten up to 35
50 and a half is the over-under. 50 and a half.
Oh, my God. 50.5, and you're favored by 35.5 points. That is a wild over under there. I feel like I would take the under. I think I actually officially picked 42-7, I think was my final score prediction there, 42-7. So take the slight under if I had to bet something, I guess. It's Notre Dame senior day, so maybe they'll get off to a little sluggish. So if you want to do a first half under, maybe that's a good idea to go. I don't know, but personally, like if I had to bet something, I would probably bet the Notre Dame to cover the 35.5, but like I would not feel good about it. Like I would steer any betting people away from that line. That line is hideous line.
All right, Ryan, we'll end it with this. My fine feathered friend here will be at this game. He is traveling to South Bend and is there with his dad, who's, as he mentioned, a diehard Notre Dame fan, raised him a Notre Dame fan. So despite the fact that Syracuse will be there, oddly, Paul will be there with his dad. I know you have been there for the pregame pageantry and all the things that Notre Dame does that make it so special, that make this this whole thing of Notre Dame, the specter of Notre Dame, something special. So tell him what he needs to attend. Tell him how early he needs to get there.
Yeah,
tell him
I've never been.
Stop by. He knows nothing. I would say probably keep him to the campus until after the game. Keep him on the campus.
Okay, that's fair. My first question, just to get some context, is Paul, is when are you getting into Notre Dame? I think that is a little bit important.
So yes, so we're flying in Thursday night to Detroit, and then we're just driving over from Detroit.
Okay. So you're getting.
So you be there Friday morning.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll be there Friday morning. Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So I would say if you want to check out a couple of the kind of cliche bars at Notre Dame, there's a lot of fun. Like, so that Friday, I would check out O'Rourke's, which is a Irish pub right on campus. I would check out Legends, which everyone goes to, especially like on game day. Like Legends is a lot of fun. And then make sure after the game you go to Linebackers Lounge. That is the bar that you want to go to in a post-game setting. But for the pageantry, to your question, Jim, like on the actual campus, I would get in super early, like 9 a.m. potentially, even though it's a 3:30 kick. Like I would get in super early. I would suggest parking near the lake, as close as you can get to the lake as humanly possible, because what I'd like to do, and just my personal preference, I like to go to the grotto first, which is where everybody lights a candle before the game, and it's pretty cool, especially for night games, because you walk out, and the sun sets early now, so you'll be able to see it after the game, but you walk past the grotto at the end, and everything's illuminated, and it's really beautiful, man, because it's right next to the lake. So I would go to the grotto first, and then I would just walk around campus and get lost for a little bit, to be honest. Like, you can go check out the obviously, Touchdown Jesus mural and all that stuff, and the little pond that they have there. Like, that's really cool. I would go to the bookstore. Like, I would just walk and see what you come across. They'll have a bunch of like the trumpets under the dome and all these cool stuff that you'll be able to see ultimately. But I would just kind of get lost for most of the day. A couple hours beforehand, I would probably go out to the Joyce lot or a couple of the parking lots and tailgate for a little bit, just walk around, see what's going on, see who's there. But
that's
then
the basketball arena, the Joyce Center, Boy Green. Go ahead.
Yep, the Joyce Center. Yep. The Joyce lot is the best for tailgating, even if you are not participating in drinking that day. It's still cool to just be around a bunch of Notre Dame fans. And then I would go to the player walk before the game as well. I think it's about like an hour and a half, 2 hours beforehand. They go right by Touchdown Jesus, and they all walk out. Everybody lines up on both sides. It's Coach Freeman and a bunch of you'll see some bagpipes and all that stuff kind of leading them out, the band or whatever. But then you'll get to see all the players kind of walk by right into Notre Dame Stadium, which is a lot of fun. So I would check out all that stuff, but I would definitely start with the lake and the grotto and kind of just get lost the rest of the day.
And then just a quick follow-up. So, okay, I heard O'Rourke's. Again, what were the locations that I got to visit beyond O'Rourke's? Where else?
Again, give them the bar scene one more time.
Yeah.
O'Rourke's on Friday for sure. If you get lucky, and it's a senior day, so you probably will get lucky. Like O'Rourke's, every time I go in, you see a bunch of former Notre Dame players. Like the last time I was there, it was like I was standing near like Robert Hainsey and Tommy Kramer and like a bunch of former Notre Dame offensive linemen that were just chilling. So O'Rourke's is right on campus, right near the downtown where they have all the restaurants and all that type of stuff. So O'Rourke's, Legends is right near Joyce lot. So Legends is a nice bar that's right on campus. So you can go there Friday Or if you were getting a drink on Saturday, outside of the tailgating, I would go over just to Legends and just kind of stand around there. It's a lot of fun overall. And then Backers,
And you said that
Linebacker Lounge.
Oh, okay, never mind. Go
Backers
ahead.
are
I
the
was,
ones for post-game.
yeah, because that's what I was
Backers
trying to
is-
make sure those are different. Legends and Backers. Okay.
Backers might be a little bit tough because it's a small place, so there's a chance that you might get kicked to the outside, and it's going to be a little bit cold, I would assume, this weekend, more than likely.
Yeah.
But if you have a little bit of alcohol in your system, I think you'll be okay. You'll be able to figure it out. So Backers Lounge, I think, is the place that everybody's going to go. Some people do the pre-gaming and stuff there as well, but I would consider it more of like a post-game stop potentially for you.
There you go, PG. That's an
Beautiful.
insider. You got
I
that.
just
You
took,
don't
I
have to
just
write
took
it
a
down.
bunch of notes.
We're recording this. You can go watch it on our
Oh,
channel
right.
for crying out loud. For
I
anyone else
forgot.
who's going to Notre
Whoops.
Dame, you've just gotten the creme de la creme
Whoops.
recommendations from Ryan
That's
Roberts,
a good point.
who knows all about this Notre Dame thing. Ryan, great having you, man. Thanks so much for the preview. Thanks for coming inside enemy territory with us. I know it could get ugly, but you never know. That's why they play the games, as they say. So all of us Syracusans still hoping that this might turn into some kind of a football contest. We hope. We hope.
Well, like I said before, I was at the Marshall game a few years ago because you never do know what could potentially happen. Let's just hope that does not happen in Notre Dame this weekend. Competitive football game for a while. Notre Dame pulls away and has a decisive victory. I think that's the best case scenario for me. But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys for having me.
All right. So there it is, inside enemy territory with Ryan Roberts.